Again, let's talk about P5. So P5 can be cumbersome, and the way that I've got it presented, there's some typos when I copied the project over from my Word document into the system. Things kind of go awry if we're doing copy paste, because the formatting gets carried over and it may be formatting we don't want. So I'm going to walk through this and we'll talk about some different things along the way that'll help you get through that project. So project 5, you're given a number of values that we're going to have to use, and they're different calculations. And I've got a list of calculations that I've come up with down here. But essentially, let's start out with the top. We're going to use the system namespace. We're also going to use within the system namespace the console class. It says console here to the right. I only want one, and they limit us to only one, so we put the static keyword in front. Along with that, I've got system.globalization, and that's anything to deal with money. I want money to be presented with a dollar symbol. This is something that's, I don't want to say it's fairly new, but it's been implicit for years. I've got another video where I explain what it is. But globalization just gives us that dollar sign. I'll talk about it here in a little bit. So we come down to our class. I'm using Replit, so I need to have a class named program for it to run. We've got our main, and that's all we're going to run on this. It's just all in the main. And a subsequent program, that will then be broken down into methods. I'll talk about that a little bit now, but we'll leave you actually doing it till later. So what you're going to end up doing is declare your variables. So I've declared each one and initialized them to some value. So this should be pretty much a been there, done that. Data type, variable name. You're creating an instance of an integer called years. That has attributes and functionality associated with it. And we have assigned a value to that variable, and that value being 0. So each one of these has a value. And then I will come down and I'll prompt the user for some value. Give me the amount that you're going to borrow. So I wrote WriteLine. Now, WriteLine is in this console class. It's a method built into console. I don't want to have to write console over and over again, so using static system.console, boom, it knows what WriteLine is. So now I can just put WriteLine and it won't be console.WriteLine over and over again. So I prompt the user, and then readLine is also in that console class. I listen until they hit the enter key, and at that point when they hit the enter key, I take whatever they've typed in, I pass it to this convert.toDouble method, which takes that string and converts it into a fractional number. And we store it in loan amount. We'll go get the interest rate, convert it to a double, store it in rate. We go get the number of years, convert it to an integer, because we don't have fractional years on this. I can do years or months, but I chose to do years. So that's going to be a whole number. Listen, convert it to an integer, store it in years. So we just acquired those 3 pieces of data from the user. If I run this, that's what we're going to see. Should come up, please enter amount to be borrowed. Gave me a warning, said, hey, you've got things that you haven't used, that you created. We'll deal with those later. Please enter the amount to be borrowed, $10,000. Interest rate, 0.05. And number of years, let's say 2. Now, it went through and it gave me this right here, this right line. Payment amount is, term is. So I've got a little bit of housekeeping here where I did some math. So I'm going to come up with a number of payments they've got to do. How many years did you want to do it? Well, I said 2. 2 times 12 is 24, so that's 24 payments. Now, I want to come up with term. Here's a math calculation that I did not give you in the directions, but this is critical. This is going to give us the term, well, let's say term. This is going to help us calculate the payment amount. So once I come up with term, I know the balance. The balance is currently the loan amount. That was $10,000. I need to come up with a payment amount. Well, the payment amount is how much I borrowed times what the interest rate is. I'm going to divide that by 12, and then I got another multiplication in there times this term, and that's going to give me the payment amount. Once I've got that payment amount, then I can move on. But we just ran this, and it's telling me the payment amount is $438.71. Okay? The term is 1.10. I don't need those things at this point, so I'm going to comment them out. Now, what do I need to do beyond this? Well, let's come on down a ways. I'll move that code up. And I want to display the data that is going to build this chart. So I'll go ahead and comment to say what I'm doing in this part of the code. I'm going to display this chart, and I'm going to need some right lines that I've gone and set them up to where they are spaced out appropriately. So I've got a static line, loan amount, well, how much did you enter? Interest rate, how much did you enter? Years to finance, how much? So these are the things that were input up above. Then I'm going to have a header, which is going to have the month, the month number, interest paid, principal paid, and the new balance. So the payment, I saw that payment was $438.71. So month number 1, these two values, interest paid and principal paid, should total up to be $438.71. The new balance is $10,000, or loan amount, less principal paid. And then we'll come down. So we've got to come up with a loop. And our loop is going to have to, we'll do a while loop. I don't necessarily know how many times we're going to go through it, but that value, it is known. But I'm going to set up a conditional. And this conditional is going to be while my counter, and I set that counter up here at 1. So it's month number 1, while the counter is less than or equivalent to the number of payments. Well, number of payments, I already figured that out. That was number of years. I input 2 times 12 is 24. So while counter is less than or equivalent to num payments, let's go through and do this. And what are we going to do? Well, I want to put my opening curly brace and closing, and I need to perform some work in here. And a couple of things that I need to do. One, I need to change the balance. So balance is going to be balance minus principal. Principal is our principal paid. So that'll be our new balance. And then from there, month interest equals rate divided by 12 times balance. Principal equals payment amount minus month interest. So I came up with what balance was here. Did this calculation, and I'm going to end up going to tab in here. I'm going to create the string, month interest string. That month interest string is going to be whatever gets calculated here. Month interest, convert it to a string, and I want it to look like money. And that's where this culture info comes from. That's up in that globalization class that I talked about before. Okay. So this takes the interest and converts it to money, to where it looks like money. All right. Once I've got that, go ahead. I'm going to do some calculations here and come up with those individual values that each time I come through, they get changed. Counter, that's how many months I've gone through this. Month interest string, that's how much interest I'm paying that month. Principal, how much principal I'm paying that month. Balance, that's the balance I have left. And then we increase that counter every time we go through. So let's run it. Stretch this over this way so we can see better what's happening in the console. It says total interest paid that I did not use it. I've got it commented out down in the bottom at this point. So I'll say $10,000, 0.05, 2. Now, it's going through. It's giving me money here. This, I want it to look like money. So what is it that I need to do? Well, let's come back. I'm going to modify these things just a little bit. So the same thing, oops, I want to copy this. Same thing that I did here. I'm going to do it a couple of times. I'm going to say instead of month interest string, I'll call it principal, not pal. I'll just leave it the way it was. We'll call that principal string now. And that will be converting principal. And this one will be converting balance. Oh, I want that a small p. Small p. I'll copy that. Now by doing this, I should be converting what I had into some string that looks like money to be output. Here we go. It looks like money now. I do have a little bit of an error in that the balance here should be that less that first payment. So that's this one line right here. It's sensitive to where it is. Okay, so we've got an order issue, and that this balance equals balance minus principal. We need to bring that down after we've calculated the principal. So we should end up with 0 when we run it. It's 0 with the balance when it's all said and done. Okay. 10,000, 0.05, 2 years. So we end up with a balance of 0. First payment, we reduced it by the amount of the principal paid. Now the only thing we've got left is the concept of, do you want to do this again? Do you want to do this again? All right. So we can essentially take this whole thing and come up top and say while that user input, while that thing that they gave me, I need some way to get out, yes or no. So I need to listen for something. So while, and my condition, I'm going to say true. While true, and that's going to allow me to continue through this as long as I want. And I'm going to come down here. This is what I want to do over and over and over again. careful about where my indentation is. So here's my main, here's that while loop. I want all of this in that while loop, but you know, I need this stuff indented so that there's no confusion about what's happening and where it's happening. So I'll come down and I'll indent this stuff in. And we're getting there. And then we've got our while loop that's displaying everything in that table. And I'm going to deal with that too at the end. There's the while, here's the other while. Now, while true, we're going to go through and do this. And right here, I want to ask the user. Want to do another calculation, y/n. And that statement, I'm going to read in if line let me put it in a storage. Let me save it somewhere first. Just say if response is equivalent to no break. And that break will throw us out. Let's go ahead and run. I've got an end of file issue. Extra curly brace is what I've got. I've got a capitalization issue is what I got. Capitalization issue again. Double quotes and not single quotes. Run it again. So it did it. Do you want to do another calculation? Yes. Extra amount to be borrowed. And now I say no. And it ended for me. So the only thing I've got to go through and do is create some space in between what's taken place. And a little line right in here that pretty much displays what the total interest paid Okay, let's see. How we turn out. So I do have a little bit of an issue, and the issue goes back to that globalization and the money formatting. So I'll go ahead and I'll take that string line that I had before, I'll reuse it again. And I'm going to call it total interest string. And that's what I'll pass. Instead of principal, total interest paid here. Clear it out, run it again, seeing if it tells me how much interest I paid through the entire length of the term in my calculation. borrow $10,000 at 5%. Number of years for loan, 2. I'll end up paying $529. So there we go. Each time as these things shift a little bit based on the numbers. It's another way I can format this, but this is a way to keep it simple for us. Okay. Anything else we want to put down here, we can add in another output line, but for what we need to do, this will get us where we need to go. Now, for the next step of it, what do we have to do in the next step? Well, we need to get all of this stuff out of the main. Not necessarily all of it. I want this while loop still in the main, but the things that happen in it, I'll push out. And we'll create methods. I think there's 5 different methods we need to create. And each one of those methods will perform a little bit of this work. We'll pass it a value, a return value, or we can have those methods pass each other the values depending on how we invoke them or call them. Okay? So see you in the next video.